And we're on air. So welcome everybody to the Midlife Retreat. This is a place where you can relax and rejuvenate and be inspired. And so what I want you to do right now is close your door, put your feet up and relax for the next 50 minutes or an hour and just enjoy the conversation. Today I've got Knebl with me. And we're going to be talking about social media and how to cope. But before we do that, Kevin and I are going to take 2 deep breaths in just to get us in the mood. And please feel free to join in as well. So you ready? Here we go. 1. And release. And the second one. And let it go. Oh. Now I'm in the mood. So before I introduce Kevin, let me just say that if you want to join in the conversation and have a chat with anybody else who's online, you can join in on the right-hand toolbar, the left-hand side. I always do this. It's there for me, but I believe it's there for you. So that works, doesn't it? Please feel free to use the chat. And then down below the screen, there's a question box if you've got any specific questions you want to ask. Please put your questions in there, and if you like the question you can vote it to the top and then we can always ask that first. And please remind me in the chat that it's there because I have to scroll my Andrew's already said I've added a question, so I must go and have a look. Perfect, we'll come back to the questions in a little while. Let me introduce my guest today. Kevin is an international trainer and joie de vivre coach. And my French is terrible, you can tell, can't you? His clients include individuals and Fortune 500 companies. He's an in-demand leading authority on social selling, relationship marketing, LinkedIn and Twitter, and with a healthy dose of inspiration. Transformational insights and humor blended in for conferences, conventions, company trainings, and many other events. Kevin is the co-author of the book, The Social Media Sales Revolution, and he's also the contributing author to Learning Mistakes with Social Media. Learning Mistakes. That's a really good one, isn't it? Learn marketing with social media in 7 days. I think I'm just going to go back to bed, mate. It's not been a good day for me today. Kevin's background includes being the top salesperson for 4 different companies, including being the top salesperson in the world for one of the international companies. He has trained hundreds of organizations and tens of thousands of professionals on the most profitable uses of LinkedIn since 2004. He has also been married for 22 years to a woman he met when she booked him to play the piano at her wedding to another man. He still regularly chases her around the kitchen. He also says he has a face for radio. So welcome, Kevin.
Yeah, well, people can see that. Yeah. So Kay, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with you. And let me just start by saying that I apologize. I went skiing on Saturday, and we got 6 inches of snow here at my house last night. I wish I could turn my camera around, but I went skiing on Saturday, and I've been skiing since the earth was cooling, and I know better. But I did not put suntan lotion on. So I'm getting over a severe burn, and I couldn't shave because it was all burnt. So if I look like like I walked off the street, I apologize, folks. I'm normally in a suit and tie, but today I look kind of like a homeless person. So this is what you get. So, Kay, thank you. Thank you.
It's the perfect retreat look. It just looks as if you've come off the beach. It's perfect.
Let me ask you a question. What are those chickens behind you?
So this is my kitchen in Mallorca. I'm not in Zanzibar at the minute. I've actually come back home to Mallorca, and we had some trompe d'oeil done on one of the kitchen doors, and those are my chickens.
Nice. You have a nice little farm going on there. That's great.
Yeah, we have. You might hear the donkey in the back in the middle of the conversation as well. He's very loud.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you. And it's an honor to be here, and I wish I was in Spain with you right now.
Well, we're going to plan on something in Zanzibar, but you're just going to have to be a little bit patient. So we'll come back to that.
I have a black belt.
Kevin, a quick question for you. Tell us a little bit about your background, especially I need to know about your story about your piano incident and why you're still chasing your wife around the kitchen.
Well, thank you for asking. And then later we'll get to my book, How to Make Lots of Mistakes in Marketing. Okay? So
You've got a new title.
I love that title. I love that title. So what I used to do for a living many years ago was I almost pulled my earbuds out. I used to be a piano player in New York City. Very different line of work. I ended up meeting my wife, my wife's name is Karen, but I never call her Karen. I call her Beautiful. I met Beautiful when she booked me to play piano at her wedding to another man. Now, we don't have time for the rest of that story, but she never married that loser, okay? And I've been married to her for 22 years, 3 kids, 1 of each, and I still chase her around the kitchen. And I prepare gourmet meals. I love to gourmet cook. So just about every night that I'm home, I create either an Italian or a French meal. And I love my wife. I overmarried way above my station in life. And I'm a blessed man. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to cope with social media, because it's something that I think everybody's a little bit concerned about when we get to our age. Every day there's a new something to learn. Yeah. And since I'm not really into Twitter and LinkedIn, I thought it'd be really good to talk to you. Facebook tends to be the place that I haunt.
Yes.
And everywhere you go, it constantly changes. Yeah. So I have a question. How do you talk to your children in today's world?
How do I talk to my children?
Do you actually sit and have a conversation with them, or are they attached to a gadget?
No, I do. It's actually a great question. I do sit and talk with my children. Karen and I sit and talk with our kids. We, at our kitchen table, we have a no cell phone rule. If they even attempt to take out a cell phone at the kitchen table, I will take away that phone probably for a couple days. And so they never attempt to do that because they know better, right? If you want to hit them where it hurts, hit them in the cell phone, right? So they know that if I'm talking to them, they cannot be looking at me and looking up and down at a phone or any of this kind of stuff. That's very disrespectful, and it's just not tolerated. I'm not dogmatic about it. I'm not a dictator. I just explain to them, part of what I talk about on stages all around the world is how to be high touch in a high-tech world. So when I talk to my own children, it's about, eye contact and taking a sincere interest in all the principles that are never going to change. No matter how much technology advances, it's still always going to be about people connecting with people individually. So I do sit and talk with my children, and we do have great dinner table conversations. And there are times when we all put our phones away and go skiing or go on spring break or whatever we do. So I think it's important to be high touch as things accelerate more and more with high tech. Does that make sense, Kay?
It certainly does. I think the interesting thing is, if you think in the next 4 years, they're expecting that the internet's going to quadruple in size. By the time we get to 2050, we'll still be just around, but it's going to be a completely different world. So yeah, high tech and high touch. I like that. It's explain a bit more about that, please.
Yeah. So I tend to keep things very, very simple, and I often tell people I'm a very simple guy. That doesn't mean I'm stupid. It just means I keep things simple. So I look at the internet. I look at Facebook, 2 cans and a string, a paper and a pen, smoke signals. I look at all of these things as nothing more than communication channels. That's what they are. They're communication channels. So I'm going to say something that's going to sound ridiculously simple, but it has profound implications. A communication tool is only as effective as the communication skills of the person with the tool. So if a person doesn't have good interpersonal skills to begin with, and they get on Facebook, because they got on Facebook isn't going to turn them into God's gift of conversation. So one of the things I'm constantly telling people is you need to go back. You need to go old school and go back to things like Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People and some of that stuff, because it's really just about creating, nurturing, and deepening conversations and relationships. Everything I do is around creating, nurturing, and deepening conversations and relationships, whether it's online or offline. So to your point, even if the internet quadruples, it's still going to be about people making personal connections, what I call sincere, authentic, heart-centered connections. When we know how to create sincere, authentic, heart-centered connections, it doesn't matter what industry we're in. It doesn't matter. None of that matters, because that's the business we're all in. We're all in the people business. It's just that most people have never thought of it that way. Does that make sense, Kay?
Yeah, no, huge sense. And that would be a great sales tool to have then, to be heart-centered and connect.
Oh my gosh. So when I was a piano player and I married beautiful, Al Gore had not invented the internet yet. Okay, so when I married her, I realized that late nights in smoky bars are a lot of fun when you're young and single, but it's not so cool when you're married. So I had to get a job. The only job I could find was 100% commission sales. A sex change would have been more in my comfort zone. Okay. So I went, they cut off my 18-inch long hair. It was 18 inches long when they cut it off. They cut off my 18-inch long hair, and I got a briefcase, and I went and I threw up every single morning on the way to my first sales call because I was so scared. But love will make you do funny things. So I persisted, and I had some good mentors who taught me that, no matter what industry you're in or what you're selling or what you're doing in business, you're in the people business. So I started studying interpersonal skills, emotional intelligence, empathy, compassion, things like that. And I just started realizing that, you know what, if you really can sincerely and authentically connect with people, the likelihood that you will do business together is exponentially higher than if you don't sincerely and authentically connect with people. So all things being equal, people do business with and refer business to people who they know, like, and trust. And we tend to forget that. We think it's about getting more letters after our name or more Facebook followers or whatever. And it's really always just about people connecting with people. So I that's kind of how I explain being high touch in a high-tech world.
I think that's something that I've noticed this year, that a lot of people in my circle of influence are making the effort to reach out now, whether it's via Facebook or via email.
Yeah.
But that's not enough. That you need to take it to the next step, which is to do what we're doing now, which is have a conversation, even if it's over Skype or some other, because you're so many miles away, but you need to have that conversation with a person first.
You do. You do.
Yeah.
And it's different in different contexts. And I apologize that I keep touching my ear. My earbud keeps falling out. I teach a system that I call my high-tech, high-touch relationship marketing system. It's stupidly simple. But in the business world, what I'm basically doing is I'm helping people stay top of mind, but not in a slick, salesy, buy my product, commission breath kind of way. It's all about how do I sincerely learn about the people that I want to nurture relationships with, and then how do I touch them consistently without ever having to really even talk about my product or services. One of the craziest things is that I get hired by all these sales organizations, and one of the first things I tell them is, stop talking about your product or service. And they're like, what do you mean by that? And I say, well, people aren't going to listen to you until they know that you care about them. That old cliche, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So I teach some very simple ways of building relationships. And some of it, actually, right here, here's today's cards that I'm sending out. So every day I send out about 15 to 20 cards, and I have a very simple system to do that. It does not take me much time, but I stay top of mind with a specific group of people that I'm looking to create, nurture, and deepen relationships with. By the way, the old school stuff, the paper cards, almost nobody does this anymore. Everybody's so addicted to their electronics that when they actually get a card in the mail, they're like, oh my God, who still sends cards, right? And they put it right next to their computer, and it sits there for the next 20 years, and they're looking at your picture every single day. So it's not some clever ninja marketing move. It's just being nice. I mean, basically, if you put a gun in my head and you said, Kevin, what do you really do? What I really do is teach people how to be a little bit nicer, and one of the nice fringe benefits is you get rich.
So there's a wonderful little tip. Go back to postcards,
Yeah.
but make sure it's got a picture of you on it.
Of course, well, or it doesn't have to have a picture of you on it, but you get my point. Yeah.
Yeah. Andrew's got a question here. So let's ask. Let me ask you this: does Kevin have a structure to his use of social media? I am heavily invested in Facebook, and many people are telling me that Facebook is on the wane. Could Kevin tell us where we should be spending our time in social media? I'm especially referring to attracting business clients.
Yeah, what an interesting question. Well, I'm a simple guy. So my overriding approach is, if you're going to go fishing, go where the fish are, okay? So if your clientele, see, I don't know what kind of business Andrew's in. So if you're in a white collar business, a large percentage of your prospects or the people you'd like to do business with are probably on LinkedIn. So it probably makes sense to spend about 15 minutes per day on LinkedIn. And then, of course, it makes sense to know what to do in those 15 minutes. And I can certainly teach that until the cows come home. Okay. So does that translate until the cows come home into Spain?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. So,
yeah, no, that's fine.
When I speak in different countries, sometimes I use American, colloquialisms, and people just look at me like, what are you talking about? Right. So,
I'll let you know if you use something we don't understand.
And I learned that when I was in Australia, there's a certain word that you do not use. There's a thing you can wrap around your waist that you keep money in. It's called a. Yeah. You don't use that word in Australia.
No.
Because it means something completely different. Okay.
You don't use it in England either. It's the same. It's got the same meaning in England.
so you want to go where your clientele are. So, various types of industries are more on Twitter versus LinkedIn versus Facebook or whatever. Andrew's asking kind of a broad question that I could give a 9-hour answer to, and we're certainly not looking to do that here. I think the key, Andrew, is having a simple 15-minute per day routine. The key is the word routine. Having something that you do over and over and over. I look at it like exercise. If you exercise consistently, you don't have to exercise for 5 hours a day. Actually, that will not help. But if you do the right exercises consistently over time, you're going to start to see results. So I can see in the chat box over here, what do you do in the 15 minutes on LinkedIn? Well, real easy. What you do is you create, nurture, and deepen relationships with the people that you want to do business with. Now, of course, the next intelligent question is, how do I create, nurture, and deepen relationships with those people? Well, there's a lot of ways you can do it. I don't know if I mentioned that there's these things called cards, okay? And there's things like taking a sincere interest. Like, Andrew, if I went and looked at your LinkedIn profile and I could see where you went to college and whether you put in your LinkedIn profile that you golf or you whatever, I can create a very simple touch system without ever having to talk about my product or service to keep myself in front of you so that you start to see that I really do take a sincere interest in you. I don't want to bother you. I don't want to be some weird, awkward, creepy stalker. I just want to start building a relationship with you. So again, Andrew, if you want to get deep into that, message me and we can talk about that offline. But at the end of the day, can I take 30 more seconds, Kay, and say one more thing?
Yeah, no, say it.
Because I feel like I'm dominating this, and I don't.
Go.
I teach an incredibly simple system that's only 3 steps. And I'm going to give you the very fast and dirty version of it right now, okay? If I have 5 hours, I can expand this to 5 hours. If I've got 45 minutes, I can expand it to 45 minutes. I'm going to do this in 30 seconds. I would challenge anybody listening to me right now to try to prove me wrong on this. Wherever you are now, and wherever you're trying to get to, assuming that you already are good at your chosen profession, I'm not going to help you with that, right? Assuming you're good at what you do, there's only 3 things you need to know how to do. Number 1, you need to be able to identify the people that you would like to do business with or create a referral relationship with. Some of the things that I teach enable you to do that almost down to eye color. Number 2, once you've identified the people, you have to be able to start a conversation with them, not a sales pitch, a conversation in a manner that does not get the door slammed in your face. That's one of the areas where I have deep expertise. I have an 87% response rate when I want to communicate with another human being, and I don't care who it is. And once you've started a conversation with them, number 3, you have to have a method to nurture and deepen the relationships with them. That's the only thing. Those 3 steps are the only things between where somebody is now, and we're talking professionally right now, where they are now and where they want to get. It's never about who's in the White House. It's never about floods or wildfires or locusts or tornadoes. It's always about being able to find the people you want to do business with, starting a sincere, authentic, heart-centered conversation, not a sales pitch, and then nurturing the relationship over time. So again, I hope I didn't say enough there to just kind of tease people, but it's a real simple system, very simple.
And that's the system you used on me. I reached out to you on LinkedIn, and you sent immediately a message back, which is great because you put in there a little comment about Zanzibar, you know, saying, wow, you're living in Zanzibar, that's great. And I answered back, and the conversation had already started. Well, which is fantastic.
Everybody that comes across my path, whether it's online or offline, that doesn't mean that they have to become my new best friend. But at the very least, 30 seconds, I looked at your LinkedIn profile when you sent me that LinkedIn invitation, and I saw that you were in Zanzibar. So it didn't take me more than 10 seconds to say something like, I hope the weather's nice in Zanzibar, which when you read that, you go, oh, he can't be sending this to everybody. It's not an autoresponder, right?
Yeah.
And it creates, so one of the ironies, and this actually goes back to your initial question about keeping up with technology at midlife in a fast-paced world. One of the ironies is actually fast is slow and slow is fast. If we slow down and sincerely connect with people, we'll get wherever we want to go faster. But most people miss this because they're in such a hurry mode that they're just treating people very poorly. They're just treating them like numbers. And then they wonder why they struggle to find business. Well, the reason they're struggling is because they're not sincerely connecting with people. So the irony is when we actually slow down and connect with people, the likelihood of us getting somewhere together is exponentially higher than if we're just running through the numbers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it certainly does. So we're in a fast-paced world, but we need to slow down. I think that's a really good way of describing it. Less is always more, isn't it?
Always
more.
Always, yeah. Slow down to speed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just check and see if there's any more questions. No more questions yet. And my screen's stuck now, so I can't scroll back up for a minute. Never mind. I can still see you and you can see me. Oh, here it goes.
I can juggle.
So another question for you. I remember, for example, my dad never had a credit card in his life and had never used a computer. And towards the end of his life, he was really struggling to keep going because the internet had taken over, basically. Banking, everything was starting to be online.
Right.
We can keep our conversations, but how are we going to keep up with that technology? You know, it's going to change. So how easy do you think it's going to be for us to keep going if it's going to multiply in the next 4 years by quadruple?
Do you drive a car, Kay?
I do.
Do you know how to fix a transmission?
I don't.
Do you need to know how to fix a transmission to drive a car? No. But you could get really stressed out when you saw a car for the first time and you say to yourself, oh, I better learn how to fix transmissions if I'm going to drive that thing. And then at a certain point you realize, oh, I don't really need to know how to fix a transmission. I just need to know how to put the key in and turn it and drive it. So I think the answer to your question is, don't worry. This is going to sound like a glib answer, but I'm not trying to be cute here.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Because it's all going to change. It's all going to trying to stay on top of it. I wake up every morning and I ask myself, what did they change on Facebook last night while I was sleeping? Right? But here's the key. It's not about Facebook. I have an iPhone here. Okay. Here's my iPhone. I have no idea how the electronics inside this iPhone work. But it doesn't matter because I'm focused on the conversation skills, not the conversation tool. So the answer to your question, I really think, is if you're stressed out at all about where technology is going, lighten up, cut yourself some slack, because it's all going to change. The trick is to not get seduced into thinking it's about the technology. It's never about the technology. It's about the conversation through the technology. Does that make sense?
It certainly does.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good way of describing it. And it comes back to what you've been saying before, you know, that it's not the important bit. I like how you said it's the conversation, not the tool that you're using for the conversation.
Can you hang on 3 seconds?
1.
I'm going to show you something.
2, 3. We're hanging on. He's just kind of put his earpieces back in so he can hear us.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
This is my book. This is not a blatant sales pitch. There's a lesson. The answer to your question is actually right here. I got a call in 2011 that went like this. Kevin, my name is Stephanie Frerick. You don't know me. We've been reading your blog, reading your LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter posts for 6 months. You've already been vetted. Would you write a book on how to use social media in sales and in small business? I thought I was being punked. I thought it was a joke, right? So when I figured out that it wasn't a joke and she was serious, I said, I will write the book with one condition. She said, what's the condition? I said, I will write a book on how to use social media in business as long as there's not one single screenshot or picture in the book. And she said to me, are you crazy?
Wow.
I said, I don't know. You called me. You think I'm crazy? She goes, okay, why are you making that condition? I said, because it's never about the technology. It's always about the conversation through the technology. So if anybody ever buys my book, there's not one single screenshot, because what we're talking about right now is we're talking about the principles behind effective interpersonal communication. If they had put screenshots in my book, the book would be outdated in 6 months when it hit the bookstore shelf. Yeah, sometimes people call me and they go, Kevin, I see your book is 5 years old. Is it still relevant? And I say, have you ever heard of the Bible? Right? You know? and they look at me, they go, what do you mean? I go, well, that book's like 2,000 years old. You're still reading that one, right? You know, so principles don't change. That's why they're called principles, right?
Yeah.
So when we understand how to sincerely and authentically connect with other people, it doesn't matter if it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, sitting at a coffee shop, it doesn't matter. Does that help?
Yeah, no, it does hugely. I think that's a really, really good answer. So, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. What a good book that was, wasn't it?
This is
all in there.
This is the answer, folks. This is the answer. You take this, you marry it with social media, you never worry about business or anything like that ever again.
So do you think technology is destroying happiness? There's more stress than ever in the world.
I hope I come to Zanzibar, because that question right there, now we are talking about one of my favorite subjects. Your question to me is technology destroying happiness? And my question to the audience would be, where do you think happiness comes from?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think that technology can destroy happiness, you're really telling me more than you think you're telling me. Because you think that technology, you think that some, so I'm going to answer your question in a woo-woo kind of way. Okay? Happiness is an internal condition that has nothing to do with an external situation. You and I know people that have nothing in the world's view, no money, whatever, and they're thrilled. They're happy people. We know other people that have private yachts and they have Rolexes and they have all this other stuff and they're miserable SOBs, okay? So it's never, I mean, is it nicer to live in a house than be on the street? Yes, but apparently it's not a prerequisite, okay? So when I work with my clients, my coaching clients, we get into my joie de vivre coaching, which is really discussing thought, how thought works, and not in a woo-woo, you know, let's sit around a crystal and hum kind of way. No offense to the crystal hummers, okay? But most people have very little understanding of where true internal happiness comes from. So here's the answer to your question. Is technology destroying happiness? only for people that don't understand where happiness comes from.
Okay.
Which is about 95% of the people.
Yeah, I think there's a huge, especially, for example, on Facebook, a lot of people are beginning to realize that people are having such wonderful lives that nothing ever happens in them. And it's so is it extenuated, the word I want to use, and amplified, you know, their life's so good that it's actually making them feel inadequate and depressed. So it's actually having a negative effect on them. But as you say, it's got nothing to do with the external and all to do with the internal.
Well, on social media, you can really present a very curated life.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like, you know, things are not always as they seem.
Always.
Someone who tells you they have no duty, no crap in their life is lying. Okay. But there's so sometimes people come to me and they go, Kevin, I follow you on Facebook and I love following you on Facebook, Kevin, but you never post anything negative. Mm-hmm. Why don't, it seems to me like, Kevin, you live some charmed life. And I tell people, well, I do kind of live a charmed life, but why would I post something negative? You have enough crap going on in your own life. Why do you need mine? Right? Mm-hmm. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to be a ray of light in a sometimes dark world. I'm trying to bring some light, but not in a trumped up, made up, fake way. I'm just pointing to the good things in life. Because we all have crap in our life, but you have enough of your own. You don't need mine. So the deeper people understand where their experience of life comes from, meaning where their feelings come from. And this is opening up a whole can of worms for a 5-hour conversation. But the more people understand where their experience of life comes from, the less they're going to worry about technology or who's in the White House or anything else. Because stress, in my opinion, is defined as trying to control something that you literally have no control over. I think Wayne Dyer said it, and lots of other people have said it, that there's no reason for stress, because if you can control something, control it. If you can't control it, well, then there's no sense stressing about it because you can't control it anyway, right?
Yeah.
So really what it comes down to is maturity. Are you mature enough? That doesn't mean you have to be old. I know 21-year-olds that are more mature than 70-year-olds, right? Are you mature enough to really look at life and realize that it's an inside game? It's an inside game. So am I getting too woo-woo?
No, not for me. I think it's really, really good.
And it's good when it's good when you bring these things into the business world, because a lot of people look at their personal life and their business life as two separate things. And I tell people, don't do that. Just be who you are. Be authentic in who you are. Actually, Andrew's initial question was, Kevin, do you have a social media strategy? Yes, here it is. I'm myself. There's my strategy, right? And I figure, you know what? There's 7 billion people in the world. I'm going to resonate with somebody. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're both drinking scotch, by the way, folks. Okay, so.
Andrew says that was brilliant. I can be me. I interviewed Andrew right at the beginning. He was my first guest on the Midlife retreat, and it was all about being me, which I think was a really good way to start the whole. I guess that's the only person we can be is ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important. We've got James and Bob and Shelley and Bill and Andrew with us, and I don't know if any of them have got a question for you. Got you.
Can you hear me okay? Kay, you just got really, really breaking up tremendously.
I can hear you, no problem.
Okay.
If anybody's got a question, that would be fabulous. Please type it into the chat or into the question bar at the bottom. And tell us a little bit more about the differences. How would you manage to do LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook?
Do you mean like from a time perspective?
Yeah. How do you not get yourself bogged down just in social media?
Well, there's certain tools that you can use that will post to multiple sites at the same time. There's certain ways that you can schedule posts so that you're not having to stare at your phone all the time. So I think the answer is just understanding how to use the tools to your advantage so that you're not a slave to the tool. Most people actually become slaves to their tool. They become tools of their tools. Okay.
Yeah.
And when you understand how to use the tool effectively, there's no reason to be a slave to it. So I think part of it is just having a simple system, a routine. I know when I get up in the morning, I know exactly what I'm going to do every day on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. See, I play on 4 platforms. And I use the word play. Okay. I don't work. Can I give you my definition of work?
Doesn't exist.
Work is doing something you don't want to do. Work is defined in my world as getting up at a time you don't want to get up, to go someplace you don't want to go, to see people you don't want to see, to do something you don't want to do for too little money. That's work. I do the opposite of work. I play. I get up when I want to get up, to go where I want to go, to see who I want to see, to do what I want to do, and I probably get paid more than I should to do it. Okay, so most people work, and what most people need to understand is they need to bring more play into their life. They need to bring more fun into their life. I'm not talking about being irresponsible or shirking your responsibilities. I'm just talking about having a childlike sense of wonder and fun, regardless of how old you are. Adults are just kids with long, hairy legs. That's all they are. Okay, so I know, and some of us have
short, hairy legs.
Some of us have
short, hairy legs.
Some of us have hairier legs than others. All right, so too much information, Kev. All right, so I know I have a simple routine that I do every single day on social media. So therefore it becomes easier and easier as time goes by. So the answer to your question is, if you just go willy-nilly and you have no structure, no routine, and you're just winging it, yeah, it's going to take a lot of your time. But if you have a simple routine that you do over and over and over, it's like exercise. You do it over and over and over. Before you know it, you have more business than you can handle. So
Shelley's just commented. She said, I learned about Hootsuite, one of the tools that Kevin mentioned, from Kevin.
I've heard of that guy. I think he's a little puffed up. Okay, to be honest with you, he's not that sharp. He's a couple fries short of a Happy Meal, man. He's not the brightest candle on the cake. So thank you, Shelley.
I haven't really got any more questions. Who's got another question? Not puffed up, very personable, says Shelley. There you are.
Thanks, Shelley. I have a question.
Yeah, shout.
It's a question for you, Kay. Now that you're 39 years old, what do you wish you would have known when you were 19 that now that you're 39, you have a deep understanding of? What would you have liked to have known back then?
Oh, that's a really difficult question.
Or what's your favorite color?
My favorite color is turquoise. That's easy.
We can start with the easy questions and wade our way into the pool. Okay.
I think at 19, I was, and in many respects, very fortunate. I grew up in a working class family with a family who were very open to allowing me to do what I needed to do. And, you know, I loved studying. I loved knowledge. And I was one of the first people in my extended family to go off to university. So hitting university on my own, I think I would have liked to have known more about relationships. So how to deal with the opposite sex, I think. So
what you would have liked, what you know now, that maybe you would have liked to know even more about, was that it's really all about relationships.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andrew says, after looking in the box, let me just scroll down my screen and see what Andrew's put in the box. He has another question for you. What do you do every day, Kevin? What is the routine you use? We don't need to know minute by minute, please.
He's kind of asking me the same question he asked me earlier, right? So and Andrew, there's a 30-second answer to that question, and there's a 3-hour answer to that question. So let me answer it this way, Andrew, and tell me if there's value in this for you. I have crystal clear clarity around who are the people, the specific people in my world, both on a personal and professional level, who are the people that I want to and need to create, nurture, and deepen relationships with. So I touch thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not more people daily through social media and through my weekly newsletter. So I touch large groups of people, but I have a very, very focused core group of about 30 to 75 people that I am in the process of creating, nurturing, and deepening relationships with. So the answer to your question, Andrew, is I'm very clear about who I need to be creating, nurturing, and deepening relationships with. And again, I have simple systems to do that. Does that add clarity to the answer, Andrew, or did I muddy the waters?
Yes, thank you, he says.
Cool.
I think that was a good answer. That was great. Let me just check again. No, we've got no more questions at the minute. Let me just ask you some questions about going on a retreat.
Sure.
Some just general fun questions while my screen decides to come back on up. So, Kevin, what's the one thing that stresses you about going on holiday?
Nothing. We covered this 5 minutes ago. I don't have stress in my life. Now, I'm not saying that I'm some enlightened Buddha. I have deep clarity around the fact that stress is nothing more than an indication that I'm trying to control something that I have no control over. I gave that up a long time ago. If I can control it, I'll control it. If I can't control it, I'll sleep very well at night. So there's nothing that stresses me about going on holiday, other than I'd like to go more often.
Okay. What's the one thing you always take on holiday?
Bathing suit. And sometimes suntan lotion.
What's the one thing you wish you'd left behind?
My kids. No. The one thing I wish I'd left behind. Oh, wow, that's a really good question. I travel so light because I travel weekly all around the world. So I'm kind of a very experienced traveler. I travel incredibly light. This is going to sound like a weird answer to your question, but I usually bring too many clothes.
Okay.
I bring like, X number of shorts and t-shirts. And then after I get done with the vacation, I'm like, I wore 5% of what I brought. So that's the answer. Maybe I pack a little too much, but I still always carry on. I never check bags.
Yeah. What's the one thing you need to ditch right now, either mental or physical?
I could probably stand to shave. I need to ditch the facial hair. What's the one thing I need to ditch? Probably caring more for people than they care for themselves.
Okay.
I can only help people at the level that they're willing to help themselves. Mm-hmm. And I often forget that. Mm-hmm. And then I catch myself going, I'm working harder to help this person than they're willing to help themselves. So maybe ditching that.
Okay, that's a really good answer. And what's the one thing you do, and what the one thing you love to do, which is sensibly selfish? Now, this is one of my little sayings. So it's about putting yourself first so that you can be in your best energies.
This is not something that I want to ditch, right? This is something I like doing?
No, yeah.
Okay. I get up every morning at 4 a.m. Not because I'm a morning person. I can sleep till noon when I have the chance, okay? I spend every morning from 4 to 5 a.m. with God. That's not going away. And I find that when I do that, so many areas of my life tend to work out better. So I'm not trying to preach. I don't care. Mm-hmm. I don't care what your spirituality is. I don't care if you believe in Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, pink pyramids, doesn't matter to me. Okay. But there's when you develop and deepen a connection with your creator or source or spirit or whatever we want to call that, mm-hmm. that permeates every aspect of your life. So it's the first hour of every morning I get myself centered with my source. And I find that when I don't do that, things don't work as well as when I do that. So that would be my answer.
That's a fabulous answer as well.
Thanks.
And what's the worst advice you've ever been given at midlife?
Try to be popular.
Most people say trying to slow down, you must slow down, but obviously you're not going to slow down either.
I'm pretty slow. I take naps every day. I tend to the slower I go, the faster I get where I want to go. Mm-hmm. So the worst advice I've ever gotten was, Kevin, try to be popular. And I have no interest in popularity whatsoever. I have an interest in creating, nurturing, and deepening relationships and loving people. If I do that, everything will work out just fine. Mm-hmm. But if I get seduced into thinking that I need to be popular or whatever, that's a slippery slope. And that's the slope that most of us are taught, right? Mm-hmm. You want to get, you want to get more likes, or you want, I got a new book coming out. It has to be a bestseller, or, it's all a house of cards. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because it comes back to what you and I said earlier. The more comfortable you are with yourself, mm-hmm. the more comfortable you can be with other people. Mm-hmm. And actually, the more comfortable you are with yourself, the more people are comfortable with you. And at a certain point, you can't keep up with the demand for whatever it is you do. Mm-hmm. So it's never about, hey, I have a black belt in a particular thing. It's, I'm so comfortable with myself that I can be comfortable with other people. They can feel the love. And that's really what life is about. It's about love. Yeah. It's about loving people. When people realize that they are love in human form, life becomes a minute to moment adventure, and it's the most fun you'd ever have.
I think that's a lovely way to end the conversation. Kevin, it's been wonderful to have you with us. I definitely could have turned this into a nine-hour conversation. I don't know if our audience would have stayed with us. We must invite you back. You must come and join us again, and we'll talk about something else. I'm sure we'll find lots we can talk about.
No lack of things. Thank you, Kay. I love you. I appreciate you. I hope our paths cross face to face at some point. Thank you so much.
I think we're going to meet in Zanzibar. So, James says, do you think so? One other question quickly. James says, do you think social media is bringing a gap between the first and the third world?
I think actually Kay hit on it earlier, that when everybody in the world is on the internet, the world is already becoming small, more and more interconnected. But according to Kay, and I think she's probably right, perhaps only 30% of the world is even on the internet. So there's still 60 to 70% of the world that isn't even on the internet yet, okay? It just makes sense that the more people get on the internet, the more everybody has the ability to communicate with everybody else. So I think that's part of the answer to your question, James, is that if there's a gap to be bridged between the first and the third world, it's probably part of the reason why there might be a gap is because there's very limited ability for the first and the third world to communicate with each other. So it kind of goes back to what we said earlier. A communication tool is only as effective as the communication of skills of the person with the tool. So yeah, I think the answer to your question, James, is yeah. As the world gets more and more interconnected, it's going to be harder and harder. We're going to have to fabricate gaps at that point. Because right now there's a natural gap. Because for me to have a conversation with somebody in Haiti right now might be a little tough due to their inability to be on the internet. But when everybody's on the internet, then you literally have the ability to communicate. I hope that's not too deep and philosophical of an answer, but I don't think that just everybody getting on social media is going to make the gaps go away, James. It's still going to come back to being sincere, authentic, and heart-centered.
Yeah. Just quickly, just to say, next week I've got a wonderful lady, Esther Knebl, coming to talk to us about her addiction and recovery and how she uses yoga to help her with clients overcome stress. So I can't wait to speak to Esther next week as well. Kevin, it's been an absolute joy to have you. I'm so glad you made it. After ditching me a couple of weeks ago for a much more important event, I'm so pleased you're with me.
No, there's nothing more important. It was a schedule conflict, but do not insert the word important into that conversation. No.
And we'll get you back. We'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.
I'm going to sign off now. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. Bye-bye.
Bye.